when we're seeing so much struggle when it comes back to repayment of student loans, why cut down on the options as part of this bill?
The focus in the student loan space has been on trying to figure out how in the world to get people educated at the college level, while at the same time not creating another entitlement. The Pell Grant is a grant and extraordinarily important. But the idea has been, how do we make sure that people aren't just going to college for the heck of it? Because I went to college, and I know a lot of my fellow students weren't there to learn. They were there to party, and going to college was a good excuse. So what we're trying to do is say, no, wait, this is real money. You may be borrowing it. You will have to pay it back. And make sure that what you're doing here is going to help you pay it back. That's the whole idea here. It's just that we can't create or build on something that's already been created, which is a huge waste of everybody's money. And worse, it's doing the kid, well, it's not a child, the young adult a huge disservice by saddling them with huge debt. So I worked on this in the Oregon legislature and realized all of a sudden that most students had no idea what they were getting into as they're busy being told, here, borrow this money. And you know, it's like free money, and wink, wink, nod, nod, maybe you'll pay it back, maybe you won't. No, that's not how it's got to work. Mm-hmm. It's got to be a real investment, and one that both the country gets something back for, and you as the individual get something back for.
Yeah, and I know, you know, I come from a long line. I've been really lucky to come from a long line of, you know, college, you know, family members who have gone to college, but you know, my grandpa always tells me that he would work for a summer, you know, painting, and that would pay for almost his entire year of school. And so as we talk not only about repayments and loans, but what are you doing to address the fact that university now is just so expensive that you know, it's not the same. You can't work for a summer and pay off your year of university. You know, it's years of working summers.
Yeah, well, I can relate to the approach that your granddad used, because I used the same approach. But I also worked almost the entire time I was in college, and part of the time I was in law school, because that's the only way I could pay for it, and so, or at least help pay for it. As more and more government money has come into it, of course colleges have raised their costs, because it's easy to do when no one's paying any attention, and it's, quote, free money, end quote. So we're a bit of a victim of our own creation. Colleges raising prices because the money was there for them to take. And so somehow we have to turn that around and say, wait, stop. This money is not free money. This money is taxpayers' money, and it's students' money. And for goodness sakes, stop raising your prices. And that's going to be extremely important, because we've got to have educated kids in young adults. So we've got to do a good job in that space, and it starts by being more careful in how we make these loans and how we get the money back.
And how are you planning to hold not just students accountable with these loans, but these universities? Right.
So you'll see in this bill, I'm sure you've seen it, the universities are now going to be responsible for kind of a risk-sharing arrangement, and thus when they're the facilitator of the loan, the university is going to have to ask itself, is this student going to graduate, get a job, and pay this loan back? Because the university is now going to bear part of the risk if the student doesn't pay the loan back. And so I'm checking into it now. I'm relatively sure that if the university ends up having to pay part of the person's loan back, then the university will pursue the student and try to get the money from that student. So what we're basically doing is saying, hey, university, you're going to have to take part of the risk because you're the one making the loan. It's the government's money, but you're the one in charge of who's going to take it, and explaining to that student that they're going to have to pay it back. And if they don't, then the university's stuck with it. We know that universities are going to be paying for part of this. And it's going to be a challenge for them for a while, because it's hard to wean yourself off of free money. And yet that's what we have to do.
Is there concern there that there's going to be less access, though, to secondary education instead of shifting the responsibility to universities and holding them to lowering the cost of education?
So we absolutely want to maintain access. But the challenge in all of these situations is recognizing that we've got to do whatever we've been doing better. We have to. The money is not there. You can tell the bond market is going up. They're starting to raise, in order to buy our debt, they want more interest. And that's driving up the cost of carrying the huge debt we already have. And they're watching to see if we're going to be doing the type of things that are in this bill to try to do everything we've been doing better, more carefully. And that's why you see us tightening up on all of these programs. We have to, because if we don't, it will be everybody paying the bill in the form of higher interest. This year, I think our interest on our national debt is almost $1 trillion. $1 trillion. If we didn't have the debt, we'd have that trillion for something else. But no, instead, we're paying it for money we spent years ago. The challenge for us right now is to somehow do good things, but do them better. The contents of that bill, it's 1,100 pages long. And so there's much in it that, frankly, I'd rather had been done differently, but that's true for every one of us. So when you put something like this together, there's going to be a lot that you really, really, really agree with, and others not so much, but it's a good bill.
If you could change one thing about it, what would you change?
Well, I'm a big supporter of Pell Grants, and so I'll be looking carefully at what's being done in that space. I understand the thinking in reducing the Pell Grant for those who are taking fewer than, I think it's going to be 14 hours when it was 12, or I don't know if my hours are exactly right, but those grants are terrifically important, particularly for community colleges. And so I would probably go back and look at that really carefully and see if it's going to achieve the purpose that the writers had in mind.